Welcome to today's Explainer. We are diving straight into a story about a figure who steps into the early pages of history almost completely quietly. We're talking about Abel, the second son of Adam and Eve. Just picture the world he was born into for a second. It's this fractured, rugged landscape just outside of Eden. He was raised under the shadow of a paradise he never actually got to see, breathing the air of a humanity that had just gone through its very first great exile. And there's no grand introduction for Abel in the text, no big speeches, no complex biography, yet he lives this shockingly brief life that somehow echoes across the entirety of history.
There's this incredible quote about him. His life is vapor, but his meaning is weight. And honestly, that perfectly captures the whole paradox of Abel. Think about it. This is a man who leaves behind literally zero recorded words. He doesn't build any sprawling cities, he doesn't forge weapons, and he dies tragically young. And yet his silent legacy entirely outlasts massive empires. It's such a fascinating mystery, right? How does a life that is so incredibly brief and seemingly so hidden become an eternal symbol? Some lives are long and really loud, but spiritually, they're totally thin. Abel's life is the exact opposite of that.
Even his name is a huge clue. In Hebrew, Abel is hevel, which translates to vapor, breath, or mist. It describes something totally fleeting that appears just for a split second and then vanishes. So his name is basically prophetic of his own tragically brief life. But here's the absolutely crucial takeaway. Abel inherits the exact same broken world, the exact same fallen ground, and the exact same distance from paradise as his older brother Cain. They start at the same line. Yet from that very same soil, Abel responds with complete surrender. He's our first historical proof that inheriting a broken world absolutely does not erase your own moral agency.
All right, let's move into Section 1, Keeper of the Flocks.
As we zoom in on Abel's daily life, this profound symbolic pattern starts to emerge. Abel is the very first shepherd in Scripture, and that establishes a massive contrast in how these two brothers approach the world. Cain's work? Well, it's tied directly to the cursed ground. It's all about extraction, production, control, and measurable output. But look at Abel's orientation. Out there under the vast open skies, walking quietly among his flock, his whole life is defined by the guardianship and protection of living creatures. Tending his flock across those open hills requires this deep attentiveness, patience, and relational responsibility. You have one brother focused on extracting from the earth, and the other totally focused on nurturing life.
Which brings us to Section 2, the first true worship.
Now, this core difference in their inner orientation doesn't just stay out in the grazing fields. Beneath the open sky at this rough stone altar, the internal difference between the brothers becomes a very visible, undeniable reality. Let's actually walk through the anatomy of the surrendered faith that Abel models here. Step 1, he selects the firstborn of his flock. Step 2, he offers the choicest fat portions, meaning the absolute most costly part. And step 3, he yields his soul in personal trust. Abel's offering wasn't just some cold transaction. He wasn't just doing the bare minimum to check a religious box. By giving his absolute first and best, he's demonstrating a deeply personal surrender. It's an outward action perfectly mirroring an inward posture of reverence.
Okay, here is the real secret to this whole moment. It's the specific order of events. The source material tells us that God had regard for Abel himself before he had regard for his offering. That order is literally everything. It proves that the gift is just a reflection of the giver's inner posture. Heaven doesn't actually care about the ritual first, it cares about the heart that the ritual is rising out of. Abel's soul is yielding itself without any self-defense, and the offering of the lamb is simply the visible proof of that invisible reality. It's entirely about communion, not achievement.
So, we hit a turning point in Section 3, the shadow between brothers.
This beautiful display of faith has a really dark consequence, and the tension between the brothers begins to skyrocket. And we really have to ask ourselves, why does innocent faith provoke such intense hostility? Well, Abel's quiet, faithful presence basically acts as a giant mirror. Those shared family spaces start to feel divided, and this heavy silence grows right where brotherhood used to be. Without saying a single word, Abel's accepted offering completely exposes Cain's unmastered heart. It really forces us to confront a terrifying truth. The righteous often face intense hatred, not because of any evil they've done, but simply because of the goodness they embody.
The first martyrdom in history was, at its core, a collision between surrendered worship and a wounded ego. Abel never argued with Cain. Actually, he never attacked him, and he never even tried to compete with him. His righteousness was just his presence. But that silent, accepted communion with God became utterly intolerable to a brother whose entire identity was built on comparison. What Cain couldn't bear on the inside, he ultimately resolved to destroy on the outside. And that leads us into a heartbreaking chapter. Section 4. The Blood That Cries.
We shift now from the altar to a stark, completely empty field. The brothers are walking together through the open countryside, and the atmosphere just snaps. This creates a tragic anti-Eden. The open earth, which was originally meant for fruitfulness and life, becomes the very first altar of bloodshed. But there is something extraordinary here. The earth refuses to just absorb this innocent suffering as if it's meaningless. The ground itself actually becomes a cosmic courtroom. The innocent blood acts as evidence, and justice is summoned by the moral structure of reality itself. Human sin deepens the wound of creation, for sure, but creation remembers.
This brings us to a truly haunting thought. The silent man now speaks through blood. Just pause and think about that for a second. Abel doesn't utter a single, solitary syllable while he is alive. His voice actually begins after his death. His spilled life transforms him from just a victim into an eternal witness before heaven. The field is empty. The flock is wandering without its shepherd. Yet he is the first life to prove that true fidelity can be incredibly costly. He proves that even in death, the righteous are absolutely not silenced. Let's look at the aftermath in Section 5, a legacy beyond death.
We transition now from the unimaginable grief of the first parents burying a son to the transhistorical light of Abel's spiritual influence, and it highlights this incredible contrast between these two lives. Cain goes on to build a city, right? He leaves behind infrastructure, visible power, measurable stuff. But Abel built an altar. He left behind a spiritual archetype. He leaves a legacy of truth. And this, right here, is one of the deepest warnings we can take away. Human history often remembers the builders, but heaven remembers the faithful.
Let's really break down Abel's enduring archetype here. He is the first silent saint. He's the first shepherd of righteousness. He is the first righteous sufferer. He's the first voice to speak from beyond the grave, and the ultimate prototype of redemptive witness. Every single innocent life crushed by envy, and every righteous sufferer throughout all of human history walks right in the profound shadow of this very first martyr. His body died in that quiet field, but spiritually, his witness became completely transhistorical.
I want to leave you with this final challenging thought. Will you spend your life building visible infrastructures that will eventually fade, or will you cultivate an enduring spiritual archetype like Abel? It really challenges us to look at our own inner orientation, doesn't it? Abel teaches us that what is brief before men can be everlasting before God. A quiet soul, truly surrendered in truth, might just outlive empires. Thank you so much for joining me for today's Explainer. Take some real time to reflect on this, and I'll see you in the next one.